Good morrow, scholars. Welcome back to Life and Death, Twilight Reimagined. Now, I was going to originally, after I started reading this for the channel, not finish reading it and just continue with the original Twilight, but curiosity got the better of me, and let's get back to reading, shall we? Let's see, where were we? I believe it was chapter 6, correct? Pocket was empty, yes. Oh, and real quick, before I forget, because I already forgot, I got this for my mom for her birthday. I'm about to wrap it once I'm done here. I know what you're thinking. Why would you show this on your channel? Well, it's because my mom doesn't watch. She said she would, but she didn't. My sister said she would, and she didn't. My brother, well, you've seen him. My other sister is watching Doctor Who right now. Anyway, I'm the unfavorite in my family. Think of me as Meg, if you would. But back to Twilight. Let's see. There we go. Alright. While I tried to concentrate... Oh, excuse me. Chapter 6, Scary Stories. While I tried to concentrate on the third act of Macbeth, I was listening for my truck. I would have thought I'd hear the engines roar even over the pounding rain. But when I went to look out the window again, it was suddenly there. My best guess is they picked it up. I wasn't super excited to get up on Friday, and it more than lived up to my negative expectations. Of course, there were all the fainting comments. Jeremy especially seemed to get a kick out of that story. He laughed till he choked when Logan pretended to swoon at the lunch table. Luckily, Michaela had kept her mouth shut, and no one seemed to know about Edith's involvement. Jeremy did have a lot of questions about yesterday's lunch, though. What did Edith Cullen want? He'd asked, intrigued. Not sure. It was the truth. She never really got to the point. She looked kind of mad. I shrugged. Did she? I've never seen her sit with anyone but her family before. That was weird. Yeah, weird. I'd agreed. He seemed kind of irritated that I didn't have better answers. The worst part about Friday was that even though I knew she wasn't going to be there, I still hoped. When I walked into the cafeteria with Jeremy and Michaela, I couldn't keep from looking at her table, where Royal, Archie, and Jessamine sat, talking with their heads close together. I wondered if Archie had been the one to drive my truck home last night, and what he thought about the chore. At my normal table, everyone was full of our plans for the next day. Michaela was animated again, putting a lot more trust in the local weatherman than I thought he deserved. I'd have to see his promised sun before I believed it. At least it was warmer today, almost 60. Wonder what temperature it is outside. Though it was still wet. Maybe the trip wouldn't be totally miserable. Totally. I caught a few unfriendly glances from Logan during lunch, which I didn't really understand. Just like everyone else, I laughed along with his fainting stunt, but I got some clarification as we walked out of the room. I guess he didn't realize how close I was behind him. He ran a hand over his slick-back, silver-blonde hair. I don't know why. Beaufort? He said my name with a sneer. Doesn't just sit with the Cullens now, I heard him mutter to Michaela. I'd never noticed before what a nasal voice he had. I also have one, I apologize. And I was surprised now by the malice in it. I really didn't know him well, not well enough for him to dislike me, or so I would have thought. He's my friend, he sits with us, Michaela snapped back. Loyal, but also territorial. I paused to let Jeremy and Alan pass. I didn't want to hear any more. Later at dinner, Charlie seemed excited about my trip to La Push in the morning. I guess he felt guilty for leaving me home alone on the weekends, but he'd spent too many years building his habits to break them now, and I never minded the alone time. Of course he knew the names of all the kids going, and their parents, and their great-grandparents too, probably. He obviously approved. I wondered if he would approve of my plan to ride to Seattle with Edith. He seemed to like the Cullens a lot, but there was no reason to tell him about it. Dad, do you know a place called Goat Rocks or something like that? I think it's south of Mount Rainier. I feel like that should also have a French accent. Yeah, why? I shrugged. Some kids were talking about camping there. It's not a very good place for camping. He sounded surprised. Too many bears. I love bears. Most people go there during hunting season. Huh, maybe I got it wrong. I meant to sleep in, but the light woke me. Instead of the same gloomy half-light I'd gotten up to for the past 2 months, there was a bright, clear, yellow streaming... What? There was a bright, clear yellow streaming through my window. Oh, okay, now I understand. I apologize. I couldn't believe it. But there it was. Finally, the sun. It was in the wrong place, too low and not as close as it should be, but it's definitely the sun. Clouds still ringed the horizon, but a wide blue patch of sky took up much of the sky. I threw on my clothes quickly, afraid the blue would disappear as soon as I turned my back. Newton's Olympic Outfitters was just north of town. I'd seen the store, but never stopped there, not having much desire for the supplies needed to intentionally stay outdoors over an extended period of time. In the parking lot, I saw Michaela's Suburban and Taylor's Sentra. As I pulled up next to their vehicles, I saw the kids standing around in front of the Suburban. Erica was there, and 2 other girls I knew from class. I was pretty sure their names were Becca and Colleen. Jeremy was there, flanked by Alan and Logan. 3 other guys stood with him, including one I remembered falling over in gym on Friday. That one gave me a dirty look as I climbed out of the truck, and then said something to Logan. They laughed loudly, and Logan pretended he was passing out. The other guy caught him at first, then let him fall. They both busted up again, Logan just lying there on the pavement with his hands behind his head. So, it was going to be like that. At least Michaela was happy to see me. You came! I don't know why I said it like that. She called, sounding thrilled, and I promised it would be sunny, didn't I? Yeah, they're okay. I told you I was coming. We're just waiting for Leanne and Sean, unless you invited someone, she added. Nope, just me. I lied lightly, hoping I wouldn't get caught, but then again, it would be worth getting caught out of it if it meant I could spend the day with Edith. Michaela smiled. Do you want to ride with me? It's either that or Leanne's mom's minivan. Sure. Her smile was huge. It was so easy to make her happy. That sounds wrong. You can have shotguns, she promised, and I saw Jeremy look up at us and then scowl. Not so easy to make Michaela and Jeremy happy at the same time. The numbers worked out, though. Leanne brought 2 extra people, so every space was necessary. I made Jeremy climb in before me, so that he was wedged between Michaela and me in the front seat of the Suburban. Michaela could have been more gracious about it, but at least Jeremy seemed appeased. Some guys just can't win. It was only 15 miles to La Push from Forks, with thick green forests edging the road most of the way, and the wide... I'm not going to butcher people's culture. River snaking beneath it twice. I was glad I had the window seat. We'd rolled the windows down, and the Suburban was claustrophobic with 9 people in it. I can attest to that. I had to ride in the back all the time. I still do, in fact. And I tried to absorb as much sunlight as possible. I'd been to the beaches around La Push lots of times during my Fork summers with Charlie, so the mile-long crescent of First Beach was familiar. Still breathtaking, though. The water was dark gray, even in the sunlight, white-capped and heaving onto the rocky shore. Islands rose out of the steel harbor waters with sheer cliff sides, each with a spiky crown of black firs. That's with the I, by the way. The beach had only a thin border of actual sand at the water's edge. After that, it was a million smooth rocks that looked uniformly gray from a distance, but close up, where every color a stone could be. What? But close up were every color a stone. Okay. I'm not sure if it's just me being awkward or the sentence phrasing. The tide line was piled with huge driftwood trees, bleached white by the salty waves, some piled together against the forest's edge, some lying alone just out of reach of the waves. There was a strong breeze coming off the waves, cool and briny. Pelicans floated on the swells, while seagulls and a lone eagle circled above them. The clouds still crowded the edges of the sky, but for now the sun shone warmly in its backdrop of blue. That sounds nice. We trudged through the thick sand down to the beach, Michaela leading the way to a circle of driftwood logs that had clearly been used for parties before. There was a fire ring already in place, filled with black ashes. Erica and the girl I thought was named Becca gathered broken branches of driftwood from the driest piles against the forest edge, and soon had a teepee-shaped construction built on top of the old cinders. Have you ever seen a driftwood fire before? What? There's no before there. Michaela asked me. I was sitting on one of the bleached benches. Jeremy and Alan sat on either side of me, but most of the other guys sat across the circle from us. Michaela knelt by the fire, holding a cigarette lighter to one of the smaller piles of kindling. No, I said, as she placed the blazing twig carefully against the teepee. You'll like this, then. Watch the colors. She lit another small branch and laid it along the first. The flame started to lick quickly up the dry wood. It's blue, I said in surprise. The salt does it. Cool, isn't it? She lit one more piece, placed it where the fire hadn't caught yet, and then came to sit by me. But luckily, Jeremy was on her other side. He turned to Michaela and started asking her questions about the plan for the day. I watched the strange blue and green flames crackle upward. After half an hour of talk, some of the girls wanted to hike to the nearby tide pools, but most of the guys wanted to head up to the one shop in the village for food. Excuse me. I wasn't sure which side I wanted to join. And I love the tide pools. I'd loved them since I was just a kid. They were one of the only things I ever looked forward to when I had come to Forks. On the other hand, I'd also fallen into them a lot. Not a big deal when you're 7 with your dad. It reminded me suddenly of Edith. Not that she wasn't always somewhere in my thoughts, and how she told me not to fall into the ocean. Logan was the one who made my decision for me. He was the loudest voice in the argument, and he wanted food. The group splintered into 3 pieces: food, hiking, and staying put, with most people following Logan. I waited until Taylor and Erica had committed to going with him before I got up quietly to join the pro-hiking group. Michaela smiled wide when she saw that I was coming. The hike was short, but I hated to lose the sun in the trees. The green light of the forest was a strange setting for the teenage laughter, too murky and menacing to be in harmony with the joking around me. I had to concentrate on my feet and head, avoiding roots below and branches above, and I fell behind. When I broke through the dark edge of the forest and found... I feel like edge of the forest has been mentioned a lot. Where was I? Dark edge of the forest, and found the rocky shore again. I was the last one. It was low tide, and a tidal river flowed past us on its way to the sea. Along its rocky banks, shallow pools that never completely drained were filled with tiny sea creatures. I was cautious not to lean too far over the little ocean ponds. The others were reckless, leaping over the rocks, perching precariously on the edges. I found a stable-looking rock on the fringe of one of the largest pools and sat there, totally entertained by the natural aquarium below me. Bouquets of anemones rippled in the invisible current. Hermit crabs scurried around the edges in their spiraled shells. Starfish stuck motionless to the rocks and each other, and one small black eel with white racing stripes wove through the bright green weeds, waiting for the sea to return. Watching took most of my attention, except for the small part of my mind that was wondering what Edith was doing right now, and trying to imagine what she would be saying if she were here instead. Suddenly everyone was hungry, and I got up stiffly to follow them back. I tried to keep up better this time through the woods, so naturally I tripped. I got some shallow scrapes on my palms, but they didn't bleed much. When we got back to First Beach, the group we'd left behind had multiplied. As we got closer, I could see the shining straight black hair and copper skin of the new arrivals, teenagers from the reservation come to socialize. I don't like the phrasing here. Sounds racist. Food was already being passed around, and the hikers hurried to claim a share. Erica introduced us to the new kids as we each entered the driftwood circle. Alan and I were the last to arrive, as Erica said her names, I noticed a younger girl sitting on the ground near the fire look up at me with interest. That's kind of weird. I sat down next to Alan and Michaela. And Michaela joined us with sandwiches and sodas. I don't drink soda. The girl who looked to be the oldest of the visitors rattled off the names of the 7 others with her. All I caught was that one of the boys was also named Jeremy, and the girl who noticed me was named Julie. Wonder who that could be. It was relaxing to sit next to Alan. He was an easy person to be around. He didn't feel the need to fill every silence with talk, leaving me free to think while we ate. And what I thought about was how strangely time seemed to flow in Forks, passing in a blur at times, with single images standing out more clearly than others, and then, at other times, every second was significant, etched into my mind. I knew exactly what caused the difference, and it was troubling. During lunch, the clouds started to move in, darting in front of the sun, momentarily casting long shadows across the beach and blackening the waves. As they finished eating, people started to drift away in 2s and 3s. Some walked down to the edge of the waves, trying to skip rocks across the choppy surface. Others were gathering a second expedition to the tide pools. Michaela, with Jeremy shadowing her, headed up to the little store. Some of the local kids went with them. Others went along on the hike. By the time they had all scattered, I was sitting alone with my on my driftwood log, with Logan and Taylor talking by the CD player someone had brought, and the 3 teenagers from the reservation, including the girl named Julie and the oldest, who had acted as a spokesperson. After a few minutes after Alan left with the hikers, Julie came over to take his place by my side. She looked 14, maybe 15, and had long, glossy black hair pulled back with a rubber band at the nape of her neck. Her skin was really beautiful, like coppery silk. Her dark eyes were wide-set above her high cheekbones. Her lips were curved like a bow, like a archery bow, or like a... never mind. It was a very pretty face. However, my positive opinion was damaged by the first words out of her mouth. "You're Buford Swan, aren't you?" It was like the first day of school all over again. "Beau," I sighed. "Right," she said, like she'd already known that. "I'm Julie Black. Hee hee hee." She held out her hand. "You bought my mom's truck." "Oh," I said, relieved, shaking her warm hand. "Bonnie's your mom. I probably should remember you." "No, I'm the youngest of the family. You would remember my older brothers." And suddenly I did. Adam and Aaron. Charlie and Bonnie's husband, George, I remembered now. He died a few years back, car accident or something, and Charlie had been really sad, had thrown us together a lot during my visits to keep us busy while they fished. We never made much progress as friends. Of course, I'd objected often enough to end the fishing trips by the time I was 11. Adam and Aaron and Jules, wasn't it? She smiled. "You do remember. No one's called me that since my brothers left." "They aren't here?" I examined the boys at the ocean's edge, wondering if I would be able to recognize them now. Jules shook her head. "No, Adam got a scholarship to Washington State, and Aaron married a Samoan surfer. He lives in Hawaii now." That sounds amazing. "Married? Wow." I was stunned. The twins were only a little over a year older than I was. Again, I'm not sure if it's me or the structure. "So how do you like the truck?" she asked. "I love it. It runs great." "Yeah, but it's really slow. Like me." I was so relieved when Charlie bought it. My mom would let me work on building another car when we had a perfectly good vehicle right there. "It's not that slow," I objected. "Have you tried to go over 60? "No," I admitted. "Good, don't." She grinned. I couldn't help grinning back. "It does great in a collision," I offered in my truck's defense. "I don't think a tank could take out that old monster," she agreed with another laugh. "So, you build cars?" I asked, impressed. "When I have free time, and parts. You wouldn't happen to know where I could get my hands on a master cylinder for a 1986 Volkswagen Rabbit?" I have no idea what any of that means. She added jokingly, "She had an interesting voice, warm and kind of throaty." "Sorry," I laughed. "I haven't seen any lately, but I'll keep my eyes open for you." As if I knew what that was, she was very easy to talk with. She flashed a brilliant smile, looking at me in a way I was learning to recognize. I wasn't the only one who noticed. "You know Buford, Julie?" Logan asked. I should have known someone like Logan would notice how much I disliked my full name. "Beau and I have sort of known each other since I was born," Jules said, smiling at me again. "How nice for you," Logan said. I hadn't noticed before how fishy his pale green eyes were. Like, fishy, there's something he's up to, or fishy, like they look like fish. Jules raised her eyebrows at his tones. "Yes, isn't it wonderful?" Her sarcasm seemed to throw Logan off, but he wasn't done with me yet. "Beau, Taylor, and I were just saying that it was too bad none of the Cullens could come out today. Didn't anyone think to ask them?" He looked at me like he knew I'd asked Edith to come, and thought it was hilarious that she turned me down. Only it hadn't felt like a rejection in the moment. It felt like she wanted to come with me, but couldn't. Had I read her wrong? My worries were interrupted by a strong, clear voice. "You mean Dr. Karine Cullen's family?" It was the older girl who had first introduced the local kids. She was even older than I thought, now that I looked at her closer. Not really a girl at all, but a woman. Unlike Julie's, her hair was cut short as a boy's. She was standing now, and I saw that she was almost as tall as I was. Logan glared at her, glared up because he was shorter than she was, irritated because she'd spoken before I could respond. "Yes, do you know them?" he asked, in a patronizing tone, only half turned toward her. "The Cullens don't come here," she said in her clear, forceful voice. It sounded less like an observation and more like a command. She had ignored his question, but clearly the conversation was over. Taylor, trying to win back Logan's attention, asked his opinion of the CD she held. He was distracted. I stared at the woman. She stood with a confident, straight posture, looking away toward the dark forest. She said that the Cullens didn't come here, but her tone implied something more. That they weren't allowed to come. That they were prohibited from coming here. Her manner left a strange impression with me that I couldn't shake. Jules interrupted my meditation. So, is Forks driving you insane yet? I frowned. Possibly. I was literally insane at this point. Or possibly I was literally... I'd say that's an understatement. She grinned sympathetically. I wonder how that would look. I was still running over the woman's brief comment on the Cullens, and piecing it together with what I'd read from Edith's reactions the other day. I looked at Jules, speculating. What? She asked. You want to take a walk down to the beach with me? She looked at Logan, then back to me with a grin and said, Yeah, let's get out of here. As we walked north toward the driftwood sea wall, the clouds finally won, the sun disappeared, the sea turned black, and the temperature started to drop. I shoved my hands deep in the pockets of my jacket. While we walked, I thought about the way Edith could always get me to talk, and how she would look at me from under the thick eyelashes, and the gold of her eyes would burn, and I would forget everything. My own name, how to breathe, everything but her. I had the girl walking alongside me now. Jules had just had on a long-sleeve t-shirt, but she swung her arms as she walked, not bothered by the cold. The wind whipped her silky black hair into twists and knots on her back. There was something very natural and open about her face. Even if I knew how to do that burning thing that Edith did, this girl would probably just laugh at me. But not meanly, I didn't think. With Jules, she would always be in on the joke. I wish I knew somebody like that. Well, I think I kind of do. Nice friends, she commented when we were far enough away from the fire that the clattering of the stones beneath our feet was more than enough to drown out our voices. Not mine. She laughed, I could tell. Were those other kids your friends? That one seemed kind of older. That's Samantha. Sam. She's 19, I think. I don't hang out with her. One of my friends was there before. Quill, I think she went up to the store. I don't remember which one she was. She shrugged. I didn't catch many names either. I only remember yours because you used to pull my hair. I did? I'm so sorry. She laughed. Your face. No, that was just my brother's, but I totally could have convinced you that you were guilty. It was easy to laugh with her. I guess so. Hey, can I ask you something? Shoot. What did that girl, Sam, what did she mean about the doctor's family? Jules made a face and then looked away toward the ocean. She didn't say anything. Which had to mean that I was right. There was something more to what Sam had said. And Jules knew what it was. She was still looking at the ocean. Hey, I didn't mean to be rude or anything. Jules turned back with another smile, kind of apologetic. No worries, it's just... I'm not really supposed to talk about that. Is it a secret? She pursed her curved lips, sort of. I held my hands up. Forget I asked. Already blew it, though, didn't I? I wouldn't say you did. That girl Sam was a little intense. She laughed. Cool, Sam's fault then. I laughed too, not really, though. I'm totally confused. She looked up at me, smiling like we already shared a secret of our own. Can I trust you? Of course. You won't go running to spill to your blonde friend? Logan? Oh yeah, I can't keep anything from that guy. We're like brothers. Only closer. She liked that. When she laughed, it made me feel like I was funnier than I really was. I can relate to that. Her husky voice dropped a little lower. Do you like scary stories, Bo? For 1 second, I could hear Edith's voice clearly in my head. Do you think I could be scary? How scary are we talking here? You'll never sleep again, she promised. Well now, I have to hear it. She chuckled and looked down, a smile playing around the edges of her lips. I could tell she would try to make this good. We were near one of the beach logs now, a huge white skeleton with the upended roots all tangled out like 100 spider legs. Jules climbed up to sit on one of the thicker roots while I sat beneath her on the body of the tree. I tried to seem only interested as I looked at her, but not like I was taking any of this seriously. I'm ready to be terrified. Do you know any of our old stories about where we come from? The Quiutes, I mean? She began. Not really, I admitted. There are lots of legends, some of them claiming to date back to the Great Flood. Supposedly the ancient Quiutes tied their canoes to the tops of the tallest trees on the mountain to survive like Noah in the Ark. There actually are some legends like that. At least she, did some research, I guess. She smiled to show me that she wasn't taking this seriously either. Another legend claims that we're descended from wolves, and the wolves are our sisters still. It's against tribal law to kill them. Then there are stories about the Cold Ones. Her voice dropped even lower. The Cold Ones, I asked. Did I look too interested now? Could she guess that the word cold would mean something to me? Yes, there are stories of the Cold Ones as old as the wolf legends, and some much more recent. According to legend, my own great-grandmother knew some of them. She was the one who made the treaty to keep them off our land. Your great-grandmother? I encouraged. She was a tribal elder, like my mother. You see, the Cold Ones are the natural enemies of the wolf. Well, not the wolf, really, but the wolves that turn into women, like our ancestors. You could call them werewolves, I guess. Werewolves have enemies? Only one. I stared at her, too eager, trying to disguise my impatience as entertainment. So you see, Jules continued, the Cold Ones are traditionally our enemies, but this pack that came to our territory during my great-grandmother's time was different. They didn't hunt the way of the way others of their kind did. I don't know why I can't read. They weren't supposed to be dangerous to the tribe, so my great-grandmother made a truce with them. If they would promise to stay off our lands, we wouldn't expose them to the pale-faces. She winked at me. If they weren't dangerous, then why? There's always a risk for humans to be around the Cold Ones, even if they're civilized like this clan alleged they were. You never know when they might get too hungry to resist. She deliberately worked a thick edge of menace into her tone. What do you mean, civilized? They claimed that they didn't hunt humans. They supposedly were somehow able to prey on animals instead. I tried to keep my voice casual, but I was pretty sure I failed. So how does it fit in with the Cullens? Are they like the Cold Ones your great-grandmother met? No. She paused dramatically. They are the same ones. She must have thought the expression on my face meant that I was only engrossed in her story. She smiled, pleased, and continued. There are more of them now, a new female and a new male, but the rest are the same. In my great-grandmother's time, they already knew of the leader, Karine. I feel like it should be Karina. She'd been here and gone before your people had even arrived. She was fighting with another smile, trying to keep the tone serious. And what are they? I finally asked. What are the Cold Ones? Blood drinkers, she replied in a chilling voice. Your people call them vampires. I stared out at the rough surf after she answered, not sure what my face was giving away. Do you think I could be scary? Edith's voice repeated in my head. You have goosebumps on your neck, Jules laughed delightedly. You're a good storyteller, I told her, still staring into the waves. Thanks, but you're just cold. It's crazy stuff, isn't it? No wonder my mom doesn't want us to talk about it to anyone. I couldn't control my expression enough to look at her yet. Don't worry, I won't give you away. I guess I just violated the treaty. She threw her head back and laughed. I'll take it to the grave, I promised. And then the shiver ran down my spine. Seriously, though, don't say anything to Charlie. He was pretty mad at my mom when he heard that some of us weren't going to the hospital since Dr. Cullen started working there. I won't say anything to Charlie. Of course not. So do you think we're a bunch of superstitious natives, or what? She asked in a playful tone, but with a hint of worry. I still hadn't looked away from the ocean. So I turned and smiled at her as normally as I could. No, I think you're very good at telling scary stories, though. I still have goosebumps, see? I yanked back the sleeve of my jacket to show her. Cool, she grinned. And then we both heard the sound of the beach rocks clattering against each other. Our heads snapped at the same time to see Michaela and Jeremy about 50 yards away, walking towards us. There you are, Beau, Michaela called in relief, waving her arm over her head. Is that your girlfriend? Jules asked, picking up the edge of Michaela's voice. I was surprised it was so obvious. No, why does everyone think that? Jules snorted, maybe because she wants them to. I sighed. You ever need a break from these friends of yours, let me know. That sounds cool, I said, and I meant it. I didn't know if it was because we'd known each other longer, if not well, or if it was just because Jules was so easygoing, but I already felt more comfortable with her than I did with any of the kids I'd be riding home with. Michaela had reached us now, and with Jeremy a few paces back, struggling to keep up. No, there. Michaela looked Jules up and down once, and then turned to me in a move that was strangely dismissive of Jules. Jules snorted quietly again. Where have you been? Michaela asked, though the answer was right in front of her. Jules here was just giving me the guided tour of First Beach. I smiled at Jules, and she grinned back. Again, it was like we had a shared secret. Of course, that was true now. Well, Michaela said, eyeing Jules again, we're packing up. It looks like it's going to rain. We all glanced up. The clouds were thick and black and very wet-looking. Okay, I'm coming. It was nice to see you again, Jules emphasized, and I guess she was messing with Michaela. It really was. Next time Charlie comes down to see Bonnie, I'll come with Her grin stretched across her entire face, showing her straight white teeth. I wish I could. Joker. That would be cool, and thanks, I added in low voice, not casual enough. Not quite casual enough, forgive me. She winked at me. I pulled up my hood as we trudged across the rocks toward the parking lot. A few drops were beginning to fall, making black spots on the stones where they landed. When we got to the Suburban, the others were already loading everything back in. I crawled into the back seat by Alan and Taylor, announcing I'd already had my turn in the shotgun position. Alan just stared out the window at the building storm, and Logan twisted around in the middle seat to occupy Taylor's attention, so I was free to lay my head back over the seat, close my eyes, and try very hard not to think. Okay, that was chapter 6. What'd you guys think? I was actually just talking about this chapter with my mom the other day when I took her shopping, because I'm a good boy, even though she doesn't support me on here. Anyway, that's not important. And we kind of feel like Julie and Bo have more chemistry going on in that one chapter than Edith and Bo do in the entire book. I think the proper term is for TV tropes would be strangled by the red string of fate? Death? I don't know. It's where the author is trying to force one couple to be together no matter what, even though they really don't belong together for whatever reason. I'll go more in depth in this in another video. Thank you everyone for watching. Let me know if I should continue, or if you would prefer someone else read, if I should practice, like maybe doing more voice work or whatnot. I'm gonna have to end this here so I can go get Iggy out of the tub. But like I said, thanks again for watching, and until next time, goodbye everybody.